Okay, so I'm going to be reading out of Romans 12, 1 through 11. Okay, so before I start, I'm going to kind of go through the context because it's important to what I'm about to read, the passage that I chose. So Paul was writing this letter to the Christians in Rome, and these Christians, he held dear to his heart. They were close to him, and they kept him in their prayers. So he felt them. He saw them as important. So he wanted to share with them the gospel that he proclaimed, and he wanted to share it with them in the full length and detailed. So right before that's like general context. Well, right before my passage, the Gentiles were upset, I guess, at the Jew. They didn't understand why the Jews were not cast away because Israel they had turned their backs towards God, so they felt like they needed to be shunned, I guess. But Paul gave this part that I'm about to read is like instruction for them, like why they're wrong, and I was going to instruct them. So, okay, in verse 1, this is all about being like a living sacrifice, having dedicated service to God. So, verse 1, it says, "Therefore, I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship." So, some people might not really know what a sacrifice is, but if we look at it in the Bible, it talks about lambs were sacrificed. So a sacrifice was dead, but Paul was telling them to be a living sacrifice. So really, he was telling them to die to themselves. So I'm going to go to Luke 9:23. You don't have to turn there. I'm just going to read one verse. But it says, "And he was saying to them all, if anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me." So he's saying, you have to die to me, and dying to yourself is what is in verse 1, like pleasing in your service of worship to God. That's what's acceptable to God. And then we're going to go to verse 2, and it says, "And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove that the will of God is, so you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect." So it says, he has called us to be transformed, which is being completely changed. We're no longer our old self. We're completely new. So, and by the renewing of our mind, he can use us to fulfill his perfect will. And so we should make God's will our will. Now I'm going to go to the verse 3, and it says, For through the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think more highly of himself than he ought to think, but to think so as to have sound judgment, as God has allotted to each a measure of faith. For just as we have many members in one body, and all the members do not have the same function, so we who are many are one in Christ, and individually members one of another. Since we have gifts that differ according to the grace given us, each of us is to exercise them accordingly. If prophecy according to the proportion of his faith, if service in his serving, or he who teaches in his teaching, or he who exhorts in his exhortation, he who gives with liberality, he who leads with diligence, he who shows mercy with cheerfulness. So that was kind of a lot, but really it's talking about, just like Zach said, there's so many parts of the church, but we can all come together in Christ, and he has made us with many different gifts, but he's given us these gifts for his perfect will. He knows what opportunities we're going to be in, what situations we're going to be put in, and the gifts that he's given us, we can use them to give glory to him. And so God's plan is perfect and has given us gifts in order for us to only give praise and honor and glory to him and not ourselves. So the last part I'm going to talk about, the last 9 through 11, is kind of like a general way we're supposed to be, a general instruction to the Gentiles. So let's see. It says, Let love be without hypocrisy. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Give preference to one another in honor, not lagging behind in diligence, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord. So diligence is, no, we're supposed to do what we're supposed to do, not kind of just mosey on. We're supposed to be intentional with what we do. And fervent in the spirit is we need to be passionate for God. Serving the Lord is kind of self-explanatory. We're supposed to be a servant, and all those things is what a living sacrifice is. That's what is required to be a living sacrifice. We have to give up ourselves and follow Christ. And the last part, my conclusion, is, so what do we do with this? We go to school every day, and we face all kind of temptation, not just in school, but just in the society we live in, America. We face drugs and alcohol and just anything, sex, boyfriend and girlfriends, getting in front of God. They can all come in between us and God. So we have to die to ourselves daily and just be a living sacrifice. We have to just give everything up for the glory of God. And I'm going to read, this is the last part. I'm just going to read another verse. It's in Galatians 2:20. And if you want to flip here, this is a good place to flip with me. Because, yeah. Okay, so Galatians 2:20 says, I have been crucified with Christ, and it is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself up for me. So the point I'm trying to get across here is the love and grace God shows to us should lead us to being a living sacrifice. And yeah, our life should be fully for God and not for ourselves. We should die to ourselves. So that's it.